All right, everybody, it's me, Gregory Mannarino. What a day. History has been made yet again, and we are not done making history by a long shot. So here we go. It is Thursday, March 12th, 2020. Closing bell just went off, so I'm still like stuck in that market mode, I guess. Look, I have a lot of stuff to cover with you today. Please pay attention to this video, and I'm going to ask you now. Please share it and get it out there because we haven't seen anything yet. Today, the stock market got destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. 10% losses pretty much across the board. All the major indices got flattened. And we, people, mark my words, we're not done. And I'm going to tell you why we're not done. I'm going to prove it to you right here. As we move forward, you're not going to believe what you're about to see. Some of you are, because you realize where we are. And this thing that we are in right now. First of all, we're in a market crash. This market is now down 30% from its high in just 2 weeks. That is the definition of a market crash. So we are in a stock market crash. Where's the bottom? We're not even close. We're not even close. People, let me explain this to you if you're new here. Despite what we lost already, 30% in this market over the past 2 weeks, we still remain in bubble territory. The debt bubble still remains. We haven't even seen the debt bubble burst yet. We're seeing cracks in it with this yield curve continuing to dive. But it has not yet burst. When the debt bubble bursts, that is going to be absolute ground zero. Ground zero. The final frontier, the grand finale, whatever you want to talk. This is just the opening act. What you're seeing now is the opening act of what is coming. Now, stocks today closed at the low. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost nearly 2,400 points. Again, just about 10% across the board for the major indices. This is incredible. It really is. But what's more incredible than that is we heard from the Federal Reserve today. I want you to pay attention to this, what I'm about to tell you. The Federal Reserve has yet decided to increase their repo operations. Today alone, in 5 separate operations, the Fed pumped $300 billion into the repo market. Again, short end of the curve, banks passing cash back and forth to each other. It's to give the illusion of liquidity, to keep the short end of the yield curve pinned down. Bigger than that. And this took, if you were watching the financial channels today, it took them all completely by surprise. I'm talking about a shocked face like you would not believe. The Federal Reserve announced today it will be engaging in a $1.5 trillion asset purchase program. You cannot call it quantitative easing. Let me ask you, while I got you here, what is it called when a central bank takes $1.5 trillion that they just created out of thin air and starts buying assets? It's quantitative easing. You're not supposed to know that. They believe it's above your pay grade. But it is quantitative easing. 1.5 trillion. Now, again, you follow this blog, you knew this was coming. How many times, put your hand up, have you heard me tell you that we haven't seen anything yet with regard to the Federal Reserve expanding the debt on an epic scale? Despite the fact, get your hand up, keep it up. I'm kidding, you can put it down. Despite the fact that the Fed has now increased its repo operation, despite the fact that the Fed is now taking $1.5 trillion that they just created and is going to buy assets with it, you haven't seen anything yet. We're just seeing the first installment. Just like when the repo scam started, It was about 10% of what it is now. I explained to you the Fed was going to not just keep it going, but increase vastly. This is perpetual. Okay, so I want you to think about that. You knew it was coming. I told you it was. What the Fed is doing right now with their 1.5 trillion asset purchases, don't you dare call it quantitative easing. This is just the first installment. The first installment. You know what they're doing. You know what they're doing, people. This is it. This is their grand finale, their final solution to be the lender and buyer of last resort. That 1.5 trillion that they just created to buy assets, who did they borrow it from? Who's guaranteeing it? You are. The American people are guaranteeing it. This, again, if you are an American citizen, I don't care what you might think. I don't care what you might believe. You own the debt. You own it, even though it doesn't even exist. It's not on the elemental chart. It's in fantasy land. Again, go to the Federal Reserve's own website. You will see that on the planet there exists 1.7 trillion printed dollars. The rest of it isn't real. None of it. Just like the 1.5 trillion that they're talking about today. Don't you dare call it quantitative easing. You understand? Now this is going to get a lot worse. I want you to think about what I'm talking about here. The stock market closed at the lows of the day. We are in a crash. We lost 30%. The definition of a crash in 2 weeks. Now, despite the fact that the Fed has promised to increase their repo scam, it's a scam. The fact that the Federal Reserve is now openly admitting, because they've been doing this all along, that they're going to take 1.5 trillion and buy assets with it. The market closed at the lows of the day. The market closed at the lows of the day. To me, this could not be more bearish. Doesn't mean this market's not going to bounce tomorrow. A bounce in this market is bearish. Again, down, up, but we haven't really even seen it up. We had a couple of blips. We've gone almost straight down. And every day we put on gains, we erase those gains and then some. You understand? It's incredible. What we are witnessing now is historic. It's absolutely, what the Federal Reserve just announced they're doing is historic. It's never been done before. Again, this is uncharted territory. It's never been done before. Never. And it's about to get much larger. Now, I want to give you a blow by blow. Blow by blow. Say that 3 times fast. Blow by blow, blow, blow. I can't even say it once. I told you. I'm not normal. All right, here we go, people. So I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna just go through a few things, and I want you to bear with me. I want to start off with this. This is the most important thing I'm going to cover right here. I'm going to read this to you because this is me from my heart, and I said this earlier today, and I say it every single Friday. Today's Thursday, but I'm going to say it now. Lions and friends, as I've been saying since forever, we're going to need each other as this global meltdown unfolds. Love each other, care about each other, and be charitable. I don't give a damn about anything else. The markets, it's all D-O-G-S-H-I-T. You can't say these words anymore. But that's what it is. If you want to write D-O-G-S-H-I-T in the comments, I'd appreciate it. But people, we matter. We matter. All this other stuff doesn't matter, and we are going to need each other like you have no idea moving forward. I need you, and I would like to think you need me. That's the truth. All right, let's move forward here with that. I want to get that out of the way. Now, here we go. As expected, we got more calls from world leaders, including the president today, Christine Lagarde, calling. Here, I'm going to read this to you. As expected, world leaders are calling on their central banks to issue more debt to save the markets. And then I say, are we in Twilight Zone? More debt's not going to save the markets. All more debt is going to do is empower the central banks. The central banks, all of them, their power exists in one thing. You know what it is. To issue more debt. The more debt they issue, the more powerful they become. If we, the people, were allowed to take that power away, we would have a real market. It would be nowhere near what it is, but the market is fake anyway. If we could take away the central bank's power or the Federal Reserve's power to issue more debt, if we had a real leader, and I'm not putting down the president, okay, because I know some of you are going to get upset. If we had a real leader, someone who said, you're done. The Federal Reserve does not have the interest of the people, and by executive order and the Fed, we would win. But the grand plan here is that we lose. Let's move forward here. Jim Cramer earlier today, most of you know Jim Cramer from Mad Money, he lost his mind today. He's calling for a $500 billion government bailout for the stock market. Well, we just got a $1.5 trillion, Jim. So you must be really happy about that. It's incredible. Why are we bailing out the stock market? Well, because that's the way it has to go. Where's that cash coming from? It's coming from you. Let me explain this to you real simply here. The president has been, our president, has been screaming from rooftops about negative rates, negative rates, negative rates. He's like bashing it into your forehead. Boom, boom. What does that mean? That means if you have your cash in a bank, the bank will now charge you to keep that cash in that institution. I want you to think about that. It's theft. But meanwhile, when the president says that, he gets cheers. Have you seen him on some of his campaign speeches? We need negative rates. Yeah! These imbeciles don't realize what it means. The president can't tell them. If the president were to say, we need negative rates, people, but that means you're going to have to pay the banks to keep your cash in them. Instead of earning interest, you're going to have to pay. Do you think he'd still get those cheers? Or are they all zombies? They're zombies. It's an incredible thing. And I want to read this to you. The Dow closed at 19,827 on Inauguration Day 2020, on January 20, 2017. That's when President Trump was inaugurated. We are going to erase everything. We're almost there now. Let me just tell you this. Again, during the president's inauguration, Dow was 19,827. Today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, I'm looking at this in real time, 21,200. Oh, we're almost there. One more day like today, we will have erased President Trump's entire fake stock market. You don't think it's coming after what happened today, after the promise of $1.5 trillion, don't call it QE, and the repo scam being increased? It's incredible. Let's move forward. I already covered what the Fed's doing. And I wrote here again, oh yeah, this is another thing that Jim Cramer said. Jim Cramer said central banks need to print a way out. His words, print a way out of the market meltdown. Really, Jim? That's what they appear to be doing, but it didn't take today, Jim. Did you notice you called for $500 billion? The Fed said $1.5 trillion today. And the market still closed at the low. What do you think of that? Hey, people, how about this? Call into Mad Money. You know, it's on at 5 p.m., I think. And ask Jim what he thinks about it. And also ask Jim why he didn't tell people to sell their stock like I did the Friday. Well, I told people, you see, I can't do that. I'm not allowed to tell you what to do because I'll get in trouble. But I did tell you what I did. You understand? I said to everyone, I closed my positions in the market the Friday before the market closed. If I would say, people, this is what you need to do, I could actually get into a lot of trouble, so I can't say that. So, but Jim could have said the same thing. He'd said, people, maybe you should consider whatever in this market. No, I warned all of you right before the meltdown, right before the crash, and that's what we have now. So ask Jim why. Well, ask him what he thinks. Jim Cramer knows me. He knows who I am. We have some common friends too. So ask him, if you mention my name, Gregory Mannarino, he'll know who I am on his show. Anyway, very important. Earlier today, again, the Wall Street banks are issuing warnings, market warnings to their clients. Okay, just so you know. And, people, I want to talk about this. And I want you to pay attention to. I'm going to read this. And again, another no confidence vote for the stock market. That's another reason why it cratered today despite $1.5 trillion and the Fed repo. The president today announced that he will instruct the Treasury Department to allow individuals and businesses to defer their tax payments beyond the April 15th deadline. And I said, stocks will fall further. It's a no confidence vote. If the president were to stop with his repeated no confidence votes, the market wouldn't be bleeding like this, and you, if you have a 401k or something, would not be losing all this money. Your portfolio lost 30% in 2 weeks. I want you to think about that. It's pretty epic. Absolutely freaking epic. I already talked about that. I don't want to miss anything, people. So just bear with me a second here. Just scroll through this. Now today, again, I told you the president said the stock market was going to bounce in a big way. This is very irresponsible to me. And I'll tell you why. Now I'm going to read this verbatim, and I gave the president some credit here, so don't think I'm just bashing him. See, if I say something bad about the president, people go up in arms. I don't believe it matters who sits behind the Resolute desk. I really don't anymore. The world is run by the banks, period. So if you can disconnect yourself from Donald Trump, picture like a little pony that was just pulled out of a circus show. And the little pony is sitting behind the Resolute desk. So when I say POTUS, think of it as a little cute pony, that one that you could cuddle with and maybe pet and feed him. Think of it that way, and let's see if we can put a perspective on this. So POTUS, the pony, sitting behind the Resolute desk, said this: the stock market will bounce in a big way. Now, I said, if he's wrong, if the pony is wrong, the pony just put throngs of people in jeopardy of sustaining unrecoverable losses. Now, if the pony is right, well, then good for him. The pony could also be a girl. I don't know how to tell the difference between male and female pony. I don't. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in New York City. So, me and ponies, I love ponies. I love animals. I donate to animal charities every single month. I pay it forward every single month. I donate to people charities, animal charities, you name it. I am a very charitable person. I believe you got to pay it forward. It's the truth. So I want to talk about this, because this is critical, and I mean critical. If you're paying attention to the mainstream financial channels, they're bringing in a lot of guests that are talking about liquidity crisis. Liquidity crisis. Now I want to read this to you. People, pay attention. This is me. When you hear liquidity crisis is being talked about more and more in the mainstream media and their guests. A liquidity crisis refers to a credit freeze, a total lockup of the system, transactions stop, no cash available from the banks, no cash available from the ATMs. It just stops. This happened in 2008. But the Fed was able to get in here via capital injections, nothing like we're getting promised now, and free up the credit markets. That's what this is really about. You understand that, right? The $1.5 trillion that the Fed just promised, that's to keep liquidity in the market. That's the whole thing behind the repo scam that they just increased. We're going to face a credit freeze. I told you, go to your bank, take out a few dollars so you have some capital, because we're going to get a credit freeze. And that's going to be it. Banks will not lend to each other. Businesses will not be able to get funds to function. We will crater. We will end up in Mad Max. You understand? That's really the scenario here. I'm going to close out of this. I'm done. The end game here is very simple. I've explained this to you for years. What the Fed wants to do, what their grand plan really is, and it is unfolding right before your eyes, and it's in your face. It's also on your back. All of it. You are the borrower. If you are an American citizen or a citizen living anywhere in the world, under the crushing weight of your central bank, who is making you a slave, is printing cash out of thin air or adding $1.5 trillion to a screen that they didn't have yesterday, and now promising to buy assets with it, you're guaranteeing it. Just like yesterday when Steve Mnuchin came out and said that the U.S. government is going to guarantee loans for businesses. In other words, not allowing them to take losses. It's a credit default swap. He's taking the risk away from institutions and putting it on the backs of the American people. Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's fair that President Trump keeps calling for negative rates? Are you one of the cheerers? You're going to cheer? Yay! I ran a poll. I said, are negative rates a good idea? 12% of the people thought it was a good idea. 12% people thought it was a good idea that the banks charge them to keep their cash in the institutions. Obviously, these are the brain dead, brainwashed, can't think for themselves zombies. I do not think it's a good idea for a bank to charge me to put my capital in their institution, and then they're going to take your capital, no matter what it is. They loan it out. It's on a fractional reserve. They charge interest on your cash, but you have to pay to keep it in there. You think that's fair? Do you think it's a good idea that President Trump is calling for negative rates right now? Do you think it's a good idea that the Federal Reserve just created $1.5 trillion out of thin air, and is going to buy assets with it, and you are responsible for it? You are responsible for it, and we're getting calls for more of it, not just from President Trump, but from leaders around the world who are now on their knees begging for more, allowing the central banks to fulfill their destiny on the back of the people, on your back, on my back, on your little children's backs that are running around your house that have a clue about what's going on, even on the little pony that is sitting behind the Resolute desk, because it doesn't matter who sits there whatsoever, at all, zero. They work for the central banks. And how do we know that? When you have any world leader calling for more debt, it's not just President Trump, calling for negative rates. Some parts of the world have them already. Calling for massive debt expansion. Well, what is that allowing? It's allowing the central banks to issue more of their product, and they become stronger. So who do they work for? Do they work for you? Or do they work for the central banks? You understand? People, like I said to you, nothing is what it seems. Nothing at all. And this coronavirus is the scapegoat here. For those of you that were hoping it was going to be the Federal Reserve that's going to get blamed, no. The Federal Reserve is not going to get blamed, and neither is any other central bank whose leaders are calling on them to issue more debt. The coronavirus, let me put a perspective on this for you. As of right now, and don't go crazy on me, I'm going to give you the numbers that they're telling us they are. About 130,000 cases worldwide. There are 7.7 billion people on Earth. So what does that come to as a percentage of the infected? It comes to 0.0001. It's, no. 0.001. It's non-existent. It's not there. It's almost not on the elemental chart with regard to a percentage to the amount of people that are alive today. Do the math yourself. Take 7, let's do this together. We'll make Siri do it. How would I word it? Hey Siri, what percentage is 130,000 of 7.7 billion?
130,000 divided by 7,700,000,000 is about 0.001688%.
Thank you. Yeah. So like I said, you want to believe that everything you're seeing right now, because that's the narrative, everything is because of the coronavirus? What was that again? 0.0016% of the world population at this time has the coronavirus? No. It's a scapegoat. It's a scapegoat, and it's allowing what you're seeing to occur. Unbelievable off the Richter scale debt acquisition. Unbelievable off the Richter scale lies right in your face. And they're about to get much worse. So people, what do you think? What do you think about this video? I would suggest, and I would ask all of you to please share it. Please Get it out there. Let people know what's really going on. We're in this together, and I'm counting on you. We need each other, people. Like I said, we need each other because we, in my opinion, haven't seen anything yet. Love you a lot. See you in the morning.